Welcome back, everyone. I'm really glad you're here today because in this video, we're going to take a deep, honest, and realistic look at what's happening with APLD stock, and more importantly, what the charts, the momentum indicators, and the behavior of big players are quietly telling us right now. This is going to be a full breakdown, so make sure you watch till the end because there's a lot of noise in the market and a lot of people are completely misunderstanding what's going on with this stock. When you look at APLD at first glance, some people still think it looks strong, but once you slow down and actually analyze the structure, it becomes very clear that APLD is flashing a major divergence. This setup honestly reminds me of many past situations where a stock looked fine on the surface, had a nice trend going, and then quietly broke its trend line before rolling over hard. That's exactly what we're seeing. APLD broke its trend line. And if I'm being honest, I would be shocked if this move holds for long. When you zoom out, the divergence becomes impossible to ignore. Price created a higher high, but the MACD created a lower high, which is one of the most classic and reliable bearish signals in technical analysis. On top of that, the price action itself is tightening into what looks like a rising channel. And historically, rising channels resolve to the downside far more often than people expect. At the same time, price moved higher and printed a higher high. But the RSI is clearly disagreeing with that move and showing weakening momentum. That gives us multiple divergences stacking on top of each other, and when that happens, it usually doesn't end well in the short term. This content is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice, investment advice, or a recommendation to buy or sell any securities. All opinions expressed are based on personal analysis and publicly available information at the time of recording. Stock market investing involves risk, and prices can fluctuate due to market conditions, news, or unforeseen events. You are solely responsible for your investment decisions, and you should always conduct your own research or consult with a qualified financial advisor before making any investment. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and there is no guarantee of profits. Investing in stocks and options, including leveraged instruments, may result in partial or total loss of capital. Now, when you flip over to the weekly time frame, the picture actually looks worse, not better. The divergence is even clearer on the weekly chart, where price continues to push higher while momentum indicators roll over. The weekly RSI is also failing to confirm the higher highs, which tells us that this move is running out of steam. From a broader perspective, APLD has been trading in a wide range for a long time now. You could argue that it's been stuck between roughly $20 and $40, and this behavior is very similar to how stocks like Nvidia have behaved during long consolidation phases. Since around October, when the broader market started showing cracks, APLD has basically gone sideways, bouncing around inside this range. If that pattern continues, which is very likely, then a move back down toward the $20 to $25 zone would be completely normal and healthy within the context of that range. On the monthly time frame, this range becomes extremely obvious, which is why patience matters here. The smart move is not to chase price, but to wait. If APLD drops into the $22 to $25 area, that's where value really starts to show up, and anything under $25 would honestly be a gift for long-term investors. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is Nvidia selling. A lot of people panicked when they saw Nvidia trimming or selling its position in APLD, but this reaction is mostly emotional and not logical. Nvidia selling APLD is not the end of the world, and it does not suddenly mean that APLD is a bad company. APLD is still a strong business with a lot going for it. Nvidia was up roughly 500% to 700% on this investment, depending on the exact entry point. Of course, they took profit. That's what smart money does. They didn't invest in Applied Digital Corporation so they could brag about holding forever. They invested to make money. Nvidia is not retail. They're not emotional, and they're not afraid of missing out. They see the same divergences, the same warning signs, and the same writing on the wall that experienced traders see. Why would they hold the bag all the way back down to their average? That's what inexperienced traders do. not institutions with massive research teams. People who sold APLD purely out of fear because Nvidia sold are not thinking clearly. Nvidia didn't even time the top perfectly, and if they can't do that, neither can you. That's an important lesson. No one consistently sells the exact top. The goal is not perfection. The goal is smart risk management. Another thing people forget is that Nvidia already rode APLD through a massive move. They held when it ran up, they held when it crashed from around $40 down to $18, and they didn't panic. They stayed in the range. It's only recently that they started selling, and that likely happened because the technicals started flashing serious warning signs. When you look at the chart, it even resembles a potential head and shoulders structure, and when you combine that with heavy divergence across multiple timeframes, it makes perfect sense to take profit. On the quarterly chart, the RSI is sitting around 86, which is extremely high. The last time RSI reached those levels, the stock eventually pulled back hard. On the monthly time frame, the RSI divergence is crystal clear. Price made a higher high while RSI made a lower high. That's not bullish, that's exhaustion. Seeing divergence on the daily, weekly, and monthly all at the same time is incredibly rare, and historically, it almost always leads to a significant correction. I would honestly be shocked if APLD didn't pull back hard from here. In the short term, volatility has already started to increase. Over the last 24 hours, APLD has seen aggressive selling pressure, driven by a mix of news, social media speculation, and broader market weakness. Technically, price is testing a very important support zone, and if that level breaks, the next logical area is much lower. While RSI is approaching oversold levels and could produce a short-term bounce, the MACD is still bearish, which means any bounce is likely to be temporary rather than the start of a new uptrend. Retail traders simply do not have the capital to hold up a stock like this on their own, which tells us that larger players are involved behind the scenes. One of the most interesting clues comes from the options market. The options chain on is absolutely loaded, especially around the $25 strike. There is heavy activity in $25 leaps for 2027, which strongly suggests that smart money is positioning for long-term upside, but only at lower prices. That lines up perfectly with the technical picture. If APLD drops into the $20 to $25 zone, buying $25 strike leaps could make a lot of sense for patient investors who understand risk. At the same time, it's important to separate short-term technical weakness from long-term fundamentals. Long-term sentiment around companies like Apple remains intact, and broader tech adoption, AI infrastructure demand, and data center growth are not disappearing overnight. That's why this analysis is not about fear, it's about timing. Chasing price after a massive run rarely works. Waiting for value almost always does. The market looks like it be gearing up for another broader pullback, and APLD is simply reflecting that reality. The takeaway here is simple. Don't be emotional, don't chase, and don't panic just because a big player took profit. If you start thinking like institutions instead of retail, your results will improve dramatically over time. Buying APLD under $25 with proper risk management, patience, and a long-term mindset makes far more sense than buying it after a huge run while momentum is clearly fading. Before you go, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel for more deep market analysis, and comment below with your thoughts on APLD and where you think price is heading next.